Ryan Schultz here from E39 Source, and today we're going to make a video not on the E39, but back to the F10. And this is going to be applicable on a lot of newer BMWs. In fact, any newer BMW, any F-body. I think they have support for the G-body cars now as well. And many months ago we talked about the Carly as it pertains to the E39 and similar generation BMWs such as the E38, E46, E53, etc. It works on any of these cars that have OBD-II, so I think that means about 1996 or 1998 and later. But today again we're focusing on the F10 5 Series. This would be very applicable to the F33 series. I'm not going to go through all of them. There's about 33,000 different F-body BMW chassis, but this will work on any of them. I get asked all the time. In fact, it can be quite annoying sometimes. People send me emails, messages, Instagram direct messages, whatever it is, and they say, hey, my car's got code P14053. What do I do? How do I fix it? What does it mean? Those are the P codes. They're worthless. They're generic. AutoZone will give you that code for free in hopes that they can sell you a part to fix the car. That's not really applicable on most of these German cars. They are borderline worthless in the way that they'll kind of tell you if it's an engine problem or a transmission problem or a catalytic converter issue, but that's about it. They're very, very, very high level and very generic. For servicing BMWs ourselves, for coding or programming, we absolutely need a better scanner. Now, of course, there are laptop tools such as ISTA, INPA, NCS, and many more. PAsoft, although that doesn't work on these F-body cars. And those are great. They have a lot of power, but you do need a computer. You need a pretty decent amount of technical knowledge to set up the cable drivers, to set up the software, to get the files in place, to convert the language to English. It's a lot of work. The beauty of the Carly is it plugs in, it connects to your phone via Bluetooth, iOS or Android, and you have a beautiful interface to go through in English and see, in layman's terms, what your codes are or what options you have to program. Now, we showed it on the E39, and there were a lot of things we could do in the general module and the light control module in the instrument cluster, but on newer cars with more computers and more features, there's a mind-boggling amount of power you have over the car's modules, what you can code and program and turn off and turn on and adjust. It's just a seemingly never-ending list, and we're just going to scratch the surface today, but I'll show you how it works. I have the module here, or the adapter here in the trunk. Keep it nice and hidden. This is the newer universal adapter, which will work in many different brands of cars. This will work on a Toyota, this will work on a BMW. I don't know about a newer exotic car like a Lamborghini or something like that, but check out their full website. Of course, everything linked down below for all the specifics. So it comes in this little box here like this, and it slides open, and then we flip open the lid, and we'll see that it's a simple OBD-II adapter that will simply plug in inside the car. I'll switch to the iPhone so we can get a better look inside the car since it's dark, and then we're going to jump on the iPhone and I'll give you a little demo. Okay, going in the M5. We got to be careful here. This is a pretty tight garage. The OBD2 port in your BMW will be found somewhere down here under the dashboard. On the E39 with the Euro dash, it's in here where the cubby would be. With the regular dash, it's kind of under here. And on the F10, it is down here. Let me flip on a light, we'll get a better look. Surprisingly, on the F10, there's not even a little door that covers it. So we'll just take the Carly, line it up, and press it into place. We'll know it's in when the lights come on. And welcome to iOS. We're in the car with the Carly plugged in. I have the key to the F10 in my pocket. If you need to insert it into the ignition, go ahead and do that. And then we're going to want a minimum of key position 2 for this, which is when all the lights come on, the gauges become active, but the engine is not yet running. Before you actually code anything to a module, it's probably best to just start the car and let it run. And it is quite warm in here, so that's what I'm going to do here in the garage. Okay, we're ready to launch the application. It is a free application from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store or whatever that may be called these days. So we'll tap on that, let it load up, and then we can select what kind of car we would like to make a connection to. So the current vehicle here would be our 5 Series 2016. If we wanted to change that, we could of course tap that and then choose a car that we've used in the past or add a new car. And here we can see a list of the supported brands including Bugatti, so you could use this on your Chiron or your Veyron. If any of you own that car, please leave a comment down below. I would be very amused by that. So our current car is correct, the 2016 5 Series gasoline, and we'll tap Connect down in the bottom middle of the screen. It's going to ask us which adapter we have. We do have the universal adapter, so we'll click on Connect. It will now take a moment to go out via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. I'm not sure what protocol it uses but it's going to go ahead and connect to the car, verify that we are connecting to the right type of vehicle, and we'll be in the app here in just a second. And here we are. We're immediately greeted by some shortcuts to different options here. I always just tap back and get back to the home screen. So let's start off with the most generic feature of the application, and that's going to be scanning the different modules in the car. It's called the health check. This is where we can diagnose a check engine light or an ABS light or an airbag light or whatever we think might be a problem. So we'll tap on health, and then we have different options here, all the different objects that the application is capable of scanning. And we'll just tap check for issues here. And this will take maybe a minute or two, so I'll speed this up for you. Okay, and here are the results. There's a lot of modules in this car, so it does take some time to get through them, though not as long as the clock would indicate. I had to take a minute there and take care of some business. But so it gives us a health status up here. It says acceptable. Things are yellow. It did find a couple of issues. So let's take a look at that. And we can start with the systems at issues. They're up here at the top. The engine has the most. There's 3 problems in there. So it's kind of giving us its best guess at what's serious and what's not. I have found we've had the F10 now for about 3 years, and if you open and close the door too quickly, I think there's probably a code that's reported for that. So a lot of this stuff is just totally inconsequential. So description: smallest amount of adaptation, injector cylinder 3, plausibility, signal implausible. That's the most German thing I've ever heard. Then it tells us some potential consequences. We can get some more information. We can search for that information, and then that 117228 there is a code. So we'll come down, we'll look at another one, smallest amount of adaptation, cylinder 2, same thing. Power management, battery, startability, upper threshold is undershot. This car does nothing but sit around, so that's probably what that code is for. So we can go through here and just clear things module by module, or we can do them all together. We could do more research on the codes if we wanted to, whatever we want to look at there. And then we have telematics. We've got an issue in there. Timeout, can message, stat, gang, backwards. I mean, a lot of this stuff, this car is just so advanced. If there's one bit of information that it's not expecting, it reports a code for that. If you actually have a check engine light on, let's say you're misfiring on cylinder 3 during warm-up, that stuff is a lot more cut and dry, a lot more black and white. And then obviously if you had, look at the amount of modules this car has, it's ridiculous. If you had more issues, these would be yellow, and you would be able to see those up above. So if we want to clear these issues, you guessed it, we tap on clear issues, and it's just going to take another 30-45 seconds, depending on how many it's got to do and how many different modules to communicate that. Go ahead and clear those out. After that, it gives us a reminder if we want to check again in a couple days and see what codes come back. I always recommend that to people. A lot of times, you haven't scanned your car in a long time, a problem comes up, you scan it, you're greeted with 50 errors and you think everything's broken. Generally, you're best off to reset the codes that are there, drive the car for a couple days, put 100, put 200 miles on it, and then come back, scan it, see what's come back in that last couple 100 miles. That's going to give you the best indication of where you should be spending your resources troubleshooting problems. So I'm just going to tap on close and we'll get rid of that. So that's a good overview of how to do the health check, how to scan the different modules. We could go after them one by one. If you had an airbag light on, you could just scan the airbag module and figure out what the culprit there is. So we'll come down into the next feature here, which is customization. We can unlock and code hidden features. Generally, these are things that maybe were not available in your market, say a US car or a South African car. They're just things that are just coded differently. The default coding is different in your area. Or there's things that maybe you want to adjust. Like in the E60, my favorite thing to code is the triple click turn signals, which you tap the signal once and it clicks 3 times, so you can change a lane and not hold it. You can actually change that to 5, and maybe I'm a slow lane changer, I just like 5 better. For some reason that's not an option in the F10, it's just not written in there, so that doesn't work on this car, but things like that are what we can code. So we'll check coding compatibility, and what that does is go through all the different modules and figure out which ones it can download a preference file from, and then edit that file in a visual editor and then re-upload it. I made that sound way more complicated than it is, but it's just seeing what modules here we have the ability to code or reprogram. So we'll let that think for a minute and I'll be back. And here it is. So it says the number of ECUs, or electronic control units or engine control units, are 14. So we'll tap OK. And now we have an overview of exactly what modules there are. So the combi is the instrument instrument cluster here, and the heads-up display, we could go in there. The light and mirrors, the CAS is the general module. I don't know why they renamed it. Idrive, that's self-explanatory. ICM, FCD, these are just what BMW calls them. So let's take a peek inside PDC, which is park distance control. We'll just tap on that. This application does make backups too. So if you make a change and something's not working as you expect it to, you can go ahead and restore that backup to how it was before, which is a great feature. Maybe if you're not as comfortable in here and you make a mistake, it's better to just restore it and start over. So we'll click Read Out PDC. This is just going to communicate with the module and bring down that preference file here. Very quick, it made a backup, and now we have the list of options. And this one, it has a good bit of options, but not as many as other modules. If you look in the light module or the general module, the general body electronics module, this screen will scroll for 5 minutes. It'll take you 10 minutes to read it all. So some of the options we have are PDC in reverse, and for whatever reason that says off, which is funny because if I do put the car in reverse, as I will do right now, it absolutely enables PDC. And that's just one of the products of BMW coding. Maybe it's off here, but it's on in another module that takes priority. Now what we can do, if we don't understand maybe what that meant, we can just tap the existing setting, which it thinks is off, and then it'll give us a description at the bottom there in orange and tell us what that means. Activate PDC as soon as the car is rolling backwards or reversing. So maybe what that means is if you were to neutralize the car on a hill and then allow it to roll backwards, it would notice that the wheels are turning backwards and turn PDC on. In fact, I'm going to turn that on because that sounds useful. Then we have PDC turn off distance limit. How far do we want the car to move before it disables PDC? Apparently the default setting is 50 meters or 164 feet, and there's all these different parameters here that we could change that to. PDC turn off speed limit, we could turn that to whatever speed we want, between 1 and 22 miles per hour. And then this is all self-explanatory. Again, we tap the current setting to get the full description of what this setting does down below. And it looks like the PDC module is also responsible for the cameras as well. We can adjust our volume here between very weak, medium, strong, and very strong, but you get the idea. You can make whatever changes you want to make here, and then when you're done, you're ready to code it. You want to tap Code Now, and then of course we're greeted with a disclaimer. We'll tap Agreed and Code Now. And then a module like this, where I've only made one setting here, shouldn't take very long at all. Then we get a status message at the top telling us coding was successful. For the change to take effect, we should turn off the ignition, turn it back on again. And then of course that it lets you know that if you do take your car to the dealer and they update your software, chances are these settings will be wiped, and you'll have to go in there and code it again. We'll tap OK. Let's take a look at something a little bit more interesting here with a lot more options, and I've always found that to be Idrive, and this is called Mbti Drive, so we'll tap on Read Out. And while this scans out, a little tip that I found: if yours doesn't work and it's rejecting the coding even with a running engine, thus charging your battery and keeping voltages above 12.5 volts, you should be at 13.5 volts with an idling engine. If it's not working, there's a setting in the application that we'll get to shortly where you can actually change the communication speed to slow, and it slows down the communication. It definitely takes longer, but sometimes the iDrive computer is just happier about being spoon-fed rather than shovel-fed. So keep that in mind. So the backup was successfully created. We tap OK, and here's a much longer list of options in the iDrive module. So this is a F10 M5, so of course it has the iDrive Start logo being the M Performance logo. And what's interesting here is we could change this to Rolls-Royce, and I've done this before, and it's just a different graphic. But if we were to code that change and then turn the key off and turn the key back on, instead of the M and the road and like the red M colors on the display, it'll show us the Rolls-Royce Spirit of Ecstasy, I believe, and kind of a cool high-res graphic. The same exists for Mini, so we could code that to Mini. And then the BMW Christmas one is just a joke. It's this red Santa and snowflakes, and I don't know who that was for, why a dealer would code that, because then what happens if you don't bring the car back to the dealership until the summer, and now you've got Santa on the nav? What a disaster. So we'll come down here, the iDrive Start animated, self-explanatory. Do you want the animation? Do you not? Do you want a black screen? You have all these options. Video in motion. If you were to play, I think this is capable of playing a DVD in here. The standard in the US is off, so as soon as you put the car in drive, responsibly, it would stop playing that DVD, but you could turn that on or change that speed to 2 miles an hour or 5 miles per hour or whatever you want here. Now there's multiple settings because these cars are very complicated. There's multiple modules. One of them or all of them would work. And I'll just keep scrolling here slowly so maybe you can read some of this stuff, but there's warning and menu sounds. The BMW bling as you'd put the key in the car. You could change that to Rolls-Royce, BMW I, Mini. You can make all these different changes here to just kind of customize your experience. And one of the things that I turned off here was the legal disclaimer. As you start the car, it tells you not to use it while driving and you have to click accept, and it's annoying, so I just turned it off. Then you can do the same for the night vision disclaimer as well. This car is missing that option, so having it on has no effect since it doesn't have that package in the first place. You can put highway junction images on the heads-up display, which is super useful. I think that was off by default, which is an interesting choice. Cruise control in the heads-up display, turn that on as well. You get some information up there. There's just a ton of information here, a ton of options you have to be able to configure the Mbti Drive system to work as you wish. And of course this works with CCC, with CIC, with NVT, and whatever the heck they're on now. Now we're going to take a look inside the CAS, which is the general module. We'll read that out. This one will have a ton of options in it because this is the general module for the whole car. So things like putting the windows up with the key, that's not a default here in the United States. You can do it in the application here and enable that. Start stop automatic default off. Let's see what that is. Engine start stop is turned off by default. That would be very useful on a newer car where it does not remember your last setting. In this car, if we turn off auto start stop, drive it, park it for a couple days, come back and start it, it remembers that it was turned off. There's some sort of a regulation here in the United States where it always has to default on, but here you can defeat that. Then here's your threshold speed for vehicle locking. So as you start driving, it will lock the doors for you. You can change which speed that happens. And a lot of this stuff can be key dependent too. You'll see a couple in here that are for keys 1, 2, 3, and 4. So say you and your significant other share a vehicle and you each have a key to it and you have different preferences. You could save one preference to his key and another preference to her key, and it would just be super seamless. But for time's sake, we cannot go through every single module here and every single specific feature you can turn on and off. We got to do one more. This one's cool. The active sound design, everybody hates on the F10 because it supposedly pumps sound in through the speakers. I've never been able to hear that before. I have turned it off. I have indeed changed it to the Rolls-Royce V12. I don't hear any sort of a difference. I don't know if that feature works or not, but I can't tell, so I'm going to leave that at M5. You also have the ability to fully defeat that feature or change the volume down here. I think it's funny that rather loud is an option in between medium and loud. Very German. Back to the main menu. Let's look at what they call the used car check. So let's say you're considering buying a newer BMW and you want to make sure that nobody's rolled the mileage back and tried any foul play. So we can enter that and then we can start the car check, and it's going to go through the different modules in the car. It will scan them for their VIN. It will scan them for their miles. If there's much of a discrepancy there, if there's any discrepancy there, it's going to give us a big red flag that, hey, the airbag module says it has 3 times the miles and it's from a 2014, but the rest of the modules in the car have half the miles and it's a 2016. So this will take a moment here and I'll show you the results in a sec. And here we are. So we have 2 data points for the VIN. We'll tap on that. We can see the VIN from the engine and the instrument cluster, and they're both reading the same VIN, which is good to know neither of those have been tampered with. And then for mileage check here, we have 5 different data points. We can see how many miles are on the car. It kind of divides that out by the year, so it tries to figure out how many miles per year, how many miles it would average have, and then it kind of tells us where we are, in case you didn't know that. And then there's 5 saved mileages here from different modules that we can take a look at as well. And then depending on the car, you may have data points for your average speed and operating hours. So you can see potentially how the car was driven. If it was a car that just sat on the highway all the time, if it was a tracked car, that's not available here in the F10. I'm not sure what vehicles do support that, but I don't see it here. Then there's also driving profile data, 6 data points here, but again, none of them are available. Be interesting if we could, how much it's been driven in sport mode, the average fuel consumption. Again, I don't know exactly what cars this works on, but it's here if it supports it. Then nextly, we have live data. We can actually see live parameters on the car, such as live battery voltage, temperatures. There's a million temp sensors in the F10 too. You would click on that, you'd tap check parameters, it would go through, query the list of cars or the list of modules that it can scan and read and give you you a customizable view of what parameters you have. So for time's sake here, I'm going to continue without the check. Like I mentioned, there's battery voltage, coolant, we can tap plus, and there's just a million different options here that we could be able to see. If we're trying to diagnose something and we want to look at air change percentage, if we want to look at firing angle, fuel percentage, it's all here, and you could customize that, click start readout, and you'd get that information. And then at the bottom of the main screen here is the settings window. This is where we would change our connection speed. I keep it on fast for the sake of this video. Our connection depth is also available in both normal and enhanced mode. We can send files from here, turn on expert mode, view the disclaimer, log out. We have all these different options there in settings. And then at the bottom right, we can take a look at features. We can see a lot of what we saw before. Then we can come down to things like a service reset. So say that you just changed the oil in your car or the filters, and you don't want to take it to the dealer to have them turn off the light. They'll probably charge you $200 to do it. We can actually do that here, and I've used this on the E60 several times. I haven't had to on the F10 yet, but we can see 5 parameters here between brakes front, brakes rear, oil, brake fluid, and a vehicle check. If we wanted to, let's say we just put front brakes on the car, we tap the I, and then we could reset that. I'm not going to do that since that hasn't yet been done on this vehicle. There's a battery reset as well. When you put a new battery in these cars, you have to do what's called register the battery. I'm not going to click continue because we haven't replaced the battery, but this application can do that. Again, saving you an expensive trip to the dealer. If you elect to do the rear pads and rotors on this car, you actually have to put the parking brake in what's called a service position, and you can do that from this app as well. So we can go into the parking brake control, read out the status, enter, and leave service mode from here, yet again saving a trip to that dealership. And then here at the bottom we have OBD functions. So we actually need to connect in a different way, so we'll start with that at the bottom. It'll disconnect as it was before and reconnect to the car using the OBD function method. And it says we are ready to go. So we can take a look at the OBD Live Data, which if you weren't able to find this in the parameters, it will be here. And again, we can just tap a parameter. Let's say we want to calculate engine load, start the readout, and here idling we're at 10.5%. If we flex that throttle, we can see those numbers increase and decrease. We will add another parameter here. How about engine RPM? Start the readout, and it looks like a S63 TU engine idles right around 780 RPM. And of course, those numbers change real time. And one more for fun. Let's take a look at something weird. How about mass airflow rate in grams per second? Start that reading, and we can see those numbers if that does anything for you. We also have the ability to start a log down there in the bottom right, and that'll save into the application. So if we wanted to drive the car on a certain route, we'd be able to keep an eye on these numbers. And that's as brief as I can do on the Carly overview here on an F10 5 Series. This would be extremely similar, as I mentioned at the top of the video, for any other BMW. The newer they get, the more options there are. And when we're done with the application here, we can just tap where it says connected at the bottom, tap on disconnect, turn off the car, and remove the adapter.
Alright guys, that is the Carly as it pertains to a 2016 F10 M5. Thank you for watching. Leave any comments down below and be sure to check out the video description for all the links to learn more about the Carly. Thanks. We'll talk to you in the next video.